Hey everybody, I'm here today to talk to you about what to paint first. When you are painting a room, there are generally three things that have to be painted: the ceiling, the walls, and the trim. And in this video, I will be telling you my opinion on the order in which those things should be painted, and I will also be telling you the reasoning behind my opinion. So the first thing that you should paint is the ceiling. And the reasoning behind my opinion is this. If you are painting the ceiling, there might be some paint that drips off of the ceiling and falls. Or if you're using a roller, there might be some paint that splatters onto the ground or onto the walls or onto the trim pieces. Now, usually people will mask off the ground to protect it from any paint, but, they don't mask off, generally speaking, people don't mask off the walls or the trim pieces. So when you paint the ceiling, okay, any paint that splatters or drips onto the walls or the trim pieces can be painted over after, because the walls and the trim pieces still have to be painted. So any paint from the ceiling that drips or splatters onto them, you can just paint over those splatters after. Now when you paint the ceiling, it is a good idea to paint over onto the wall. So instead of taping the walls, with painter's tape to mask off the edges, just paint over onto the wall when you are painting the ceiling. Now the second thing that you should paint is the trim. And I'll tell you the reasoning in just a few moments. The third thing that you should paint is obviously the wall, or I should say the walls. And the reasoning behind those two, the trim and the walls being in that order, is as follows. So, just as I said before, when we paint the ceiling, you should be painting over onto the walls so that you don't have to use any painter's tape to mask off the edges. Next, you should paint the trim, and you should also paint over onto the wall, so don't put any painter's tape or mask off the edge, just paint right over onto the wall. So the first thing that you paint is the ceiling, you paint right over onto the wall. The second thing that you paint is the trim, and you paint right over onto the wall. Now, the wall is in between the trim and the ceiling, okay? So all that you have to do is tape the ceiling and tape the trim, and then you can paint the wall. So the reason that I put the trim as second is basically when you paint the wall, you can mask off the ceiling and the trim at the same time once the paint has dried on the ceiling and the trim, because they are already painted. When you have finished, just imagine this, you have finished painting the ceiling, you have finished painting the trim, and all of the paint has dried. You can now mask off the ceiling and the trim together, okay? At the same time, you can mask off the ceiling and the trim, and then you can paint the wall with both of those things being masked off. And that's basically it. In this video, I have talked to you about what to paint first, and I have also spoken about the order for painting the things in a room regarding the ceiling, the walls, and the trim. Once again, I have recommended that you paint the ceiling first and paint right over onto the wall. Don't mask anything off. Paint the trim second and paint right over onto the wall. Don't mask anything off. Let the paint on the ceiling and the trim dry. Then mask off the ceiling and the trim, and then paint the walls third. And that's basically it. I hope that you have enjoyed this video. And that's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching.